Well, I'm resting from a long walk I did yesterday, and somebody helped me out and cut my walk in half, and that was good because she gave me a ride, but otherwise I think it would have been worse. Um, but during the walk, I got an idea that I had been getting, and periodically, and I didn't follow through on it because I was partly busy with other things, and I don't know, and then I forgot about it. But I'm in downtime right now. I don't have any ideas, and that idea came to me, so I thought I would do that today. And I'll give you a little heads up what it is. The magnetic amplifier series of circuits. I used to think the House of Mirrors was the best, you know. Before that, I thought the lightning oscillator series of circuits was the best. So there's always some group, and when it's really good, I get to deviate it and vary it and make all kinds of different variations and applications, and whatever I can get away with, whatever the circuit allows me to get away with, because some things I just can't do, like the AM radio series of circuits, charging batteries from an AM radio. That was a whole nice deal. So there are various ones that are my favorites until another series comes along, and then once in a while I'll just do one that's all by itself, and I really can't do anything further with it. But the magnetic amplifier, I've already made note of the fact. If you go to is.gd/mag_amp, I've redid that by putting text in, because from my studies I realized that's 4 different types of circuits that we already know about, and one of the 4 has 2 different phrases for it, so it's like 5 different phrases for the same circuit. Magnetic amplifier is just one. An LMD analog computer is another. And then there's the pole transformer, which is also called something else, like a voltage distribution something, because it's a step down. It's a step down pole transformer, which is what pole transformers are. They're step down transformers. And then the 4th one, I can't remember, but there were 4 different concepts. Yeah, I don't think it'll come to me. The LMD module, pole transformer, magnetic amplifier. Yeah, I can't remember. So that's 3 out of 4 that I can remember off the top of my head. And that means it's a very universal basic concept, which has been around since 1885 at least. So at the moment, that's my favorite circuit, and that's what I'm going to work on today. I'm going to put in a timer. If you go to is.gd/low-fric, LOWFREQ, or high-fric, which is my favorite over the low, because the low uses a battery in a way that's not very conservative or something. It wastes energy of the battery, and it's not really necessary the way it's. But I thought I'd do it as a deviation to show, what could be done, When I do something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's over unity. Sometimes it's just interesting because it's a different way of doing things. I go, oh, that's interesting. I might as well post that. But most of the time, I try to stick to over unity. Energy in does not equal energy out. That we don't have to pay for. The idea behind the low and the high fric is that you take a timer and a set of analog switches, and you force alternation between the 2 phases of escalation and de-escalation, instead of just manually choosing between them. And the third option is to use an analog switch tied to the circuit so that it regulates itself, and that's what the lightning oscillator did do before it developed into a lightning oscillator. Or mesmerizing is another one. is.gd/mesmerizing, mesmerizing 2, numeral 2, mesmerizing numeral 3. I think 2 and 3, one of them is the better of the 3 mesmerizings. But it shows that I didn't do discharge yet, that came after that, and then became the series of lightning oscillators, global thunder. Hallelujah, I don't know which one that was. is.gd/hallelujah. That, I think, came before mesmerizing. So that was still unidirectional DC impulse spikes, because I didn't have provision for ground. I wasn't grounding the circuit allowing it to discharge itself periodically and show that it can oscillate with periodic discharges and oscillate its polarity and become very organized. That was quite a breakthrough. Anywho, at that point, I had frozen the analog switch shut, the toggle switch, into one position using a battery, a 3-volt battery source. And I couldn't take it out and replace it with resistors. It didn't work. For some reason, it had to be an analog switch frozen. But prior to that, it was another series of circuits. Free energy, aerial energy, battery, was it charging? Aerial charging? Battery charging? Free energy. Well, something along those lines. And it was the predecessor to the mesmerizing, which was the predecessor to the lightning oscillator. So a lot of these circuits, they take a long time to develop, and then in the case of the House of Mirrors, I was doing the AM radio, battery charging with an AM radio. What came before that, no, I was doing the AM radio, and I was developing it further, and it wasn't working out too well, but I got an interesting arrangement of a sub-circuit that was so interesting, I took it and detached it from the whole thing, and it ran on its own. It was so powerful, and that became the House of Mirrors series of circuits. It's just a fascinating little arrangement of spark gaps and capacitors, and the very important singular coil of wire in the center, air core, or a double coil of a transformer, which worked even better. I called it magfly because it was like a flywheel. is.gd/magfly. But I had another set of circuits in there in which I had a timer, I think. Maybe. Actually, no, it was this idea to put a capacitor underneath the aerial, and then it goes to the LMD core with its 2 branch circuits. And then I learned to put the battery outside the capacitor, between the capacitor and the aerial, or diodes. And I got some very interesting results, because the diode in the case of an over-unity circuit behaves a little differently. You don't just get double or half the power. You don't just get the plus side or the negative side, if that's your choice, of the waves. It's more than that. And this is probably what Paul Falstad meant when he put a cap and an arbitrary current limit on diodes and transistors, because they are weird, according to him. That was his choice of words. Well, to me, that just means anomalous current surge. And that's what it was doing. That's what it does. Under certain conditions, when you have unidirectional DC impulses trying to flow through a diode, you get magnification of those impulses. It somehow organizes them into a coherent union of force, so that they're not random spikes anymore. They join forces together and heave in the same direction at the same time. And that's not normal for a unidirectional impulse. Each one wants to do its own thing when it wants to do it, to whatever extent it wants to do it, and it's like, come on guys, can't you get organized, Well, a diode organizes them, and I suppose a transistor will too sometimes, but Paul Babcock, how many transistors did he say he fried? So whether or not it can be done in the real world is another matter, and that's probably why Paul Falstad put an arbitrary current limit on them, because in the circuit simulator, because he realized if you tried to build that, you would be frying all your diodes and transistors, and that's probably true. But I took it away, because in my land of virtual reality, I don't want limits, because I know that that's the psychology of the consciousness of free energy, is that it does not want to have limits. It wants to do it, no limits whatsoever. And so whatever limits I impose have to be a light touch. No heavy-handedness whatsoever, like is commonplace in today's electrical engineering, led by today's theology of physics. An attitude of heavy-handedness, of micro-controlling, micromanaging everything, every little detail, down to the last nut and bolt, and you pay for that through the nose. Not only in terms of what you're trying to do, but what you miss out on. You miss out on so much. If you just lightly control a free energy impulse, and don't try to control it too much, you get the best of both worlds. You get the over-unity, but you also get a certain amount of management. And the tricks of management of free energy is, of course, different than what they teach for micromanaging the entirety of electrical dynamics. You have to use like analog switches to create surges. Sometimes you have to keep injecting surges into the circuit to keep it going. Turning it on is one surge, turning it off is another. Of course, when you turn it off, you don't get the benefit of the surge when you turn it off. But any kind of switch, and Paul Fawcett made a point of putting this into his switches, which is good, is its default of a surge every time you turn a switch on or off. And so I learned by the use of analog switches, either tied to the circuit or tied to a timer, that I could inject surges periodically to keep it going, if I needed to. If I needed to. It's all based on need. Spark gaps, only when you need them, you know, and I have to be in the right place. If they're in the wrong place, they don't do any good. They get in the way, because you may not reach a voltage breakdown point, and then it's infinite resistance just sitting there, or, you know, close to it, you know, very large resistance. And the last thing I want in my circuits are resistors, so I only put them where I feel I need to, and that's by a coil, in order to include resistance in the coil, because simulators by and large don't include it. I mean, LT-Spice gives you the facility to add a series resistance, which Paul Fawcett does not do. But I never use the series resistance in an LT-Spice because it doesn't produce good results. So I'm not exactly being realistic when I craft a circuit in LT-Spice anyway, because I always just put another resistor on either side of the coil, which is not the same thing, because that means the coil itself is a superconductor, which means you're going to get results from that coil that you wouldn't get otherwise. So, you know, I'm not always realistic, and I do it on purpose because I want the over-unity, right, you know? I'm entertaining myself here, you know? But the mag amp series of circuits are the closest to reality, because A, they've already been invented over a century ago. About almost 1.5 centuries, quite frankly. 1885, you do the math. I think my grandmother was a year old at that point, you know. So, that's a long time ago, when we still had silver dollars and silver currency. Oh my God. And for theater lighting of all things, they were using it for. But now we use it as a step-down pole transformer, and with a little help from Eric Dollard, it can be modified ever so slightly into an LMD module, LMD analog computer module. So that's really great as a circuit. Oh, that was the fourth thing. DC to AC inverter. That's very important, because I don't think too many of my circuits produce AC sine waves, quite frankly. I mean, they do. Actually, no. Many do. But you can't appreciate it because it's such a high frequency, and the time frame is so long. You don't get to see the wave. You just see this wash of color across the oscilloscope tracing, because it has to compact all of the sine wave peaks and troughs into this wash of color. You don't get to pick out the waves. It's just, you know, so you don't get to see what it looks like, because it may not be sine waves. It might be unidirectional DC impulses. There's no way to know. I mean, you can look at the edge and see, is it a smooth edge, or is it is it got little niches in it, or does it have random depth of niches? That's the unidirectional, in all likelihood, spikes compacted together. But to see a sine wave and to see that it's around, I think the last one I developed was with the transformer, the mag amp and that gave a boost and a sink. I realized then that Paul Falstad's magnetizable core of his transformers both produce free energy and are a sinkhole for it. They eat it up. And so as a proficient coil, it's much better than the air core singular coil, singular inductor that he provides for our use. And of course the capacitors also can at least, produce over unity, so I suppose if they can produce it, they can chew it up as well. But they're chewing up the capacitance aspect of the circuit, while the magnetizable core of the transformer can chew up or produce the magnetic side of a circuit dynamics. So his circuit simulator is very proficient in introducing free energy to us. People criticize too much. They don't see the good in things. If you don't get started, you'll never get to the phase of being realistic. But people only want to be realistic, and so they don't really want to investigate free energy and to find out that it's nowhere near the same in its behavior to conventional style electricity management, because that's what we do. We manage electricity, and the conventional way we manage it, nowhere near the same as free energy style of management. You have to live a little in order to learn how to manage free energy. You can't restrict yourself in any way, shape, or form. And only once you get to know how it behaves and how to manage it, only then can you begin to think about being practical and realistic and how do you build this. I mean, you've got to develop a skill that you did not get in school. You got the opposite. Just kill it, snub it. And physics doesn't want to recognize its existence. So, the four-quadrant theory of electricity, according to Eric Dollard, there's magnetism, and there's dielectricity, and there's production, and there's consumption. And the consumption has nothing to do with thermodynamic losses and conversions. That's something else. That should be already covered, in your basic 101. This is something else entirely, this four-quadrant theory of electricity. It doesn't have anything to do with thermodynamic losses and conversions of energy. Change my position here. And unless you've got Eric Dollard at least a little bit under your belt, there's no chance in God heaven. God help you. Because he's the best. He takes something complicated and makes it simple, or he gives you the math if you're an engineer, If you sorry. If you need to know the math, he's got it, because he's studied the matter and he knows how to engineer free energy. He won't admit to it these days, but he admits to it in older posts on Energetic Forum that somebody had accumulated and put all in one place, so it was good to know. So I'm going to work on that. And what was the point of this video? I said it in the beginning, so I guess it does not need repeating since I already forgot what it was. You just go back and replay. It's the nice part about videos. You don't have to remember anything. Except what's in front of your nose. And so today it's going to be a mag amp circuit. I'm going to try to put a timer on there. First I'm going to see about analog switches without timing. Just see if it can self-regulate, self-time itself. The use of analog toggle switches. And I'm going to see if I can take out the battery on the left-hand side, because it seems like it is superfluous. It's not needed. It was just to tweak it so that it looks very idealistic the way it behaves. I wanted it to behave in a very smooth, coherent fashion. But I have a pop-open analog switch that's only connected for an instant, and then it disconnects the battery, because I only want an instant of time that battery is connected to the circuit to get it started. And then once it gets started, then I make use of an aerial to escalate it. So there are two different phases to conventional sources to fund the circuit, but the use of the aerial is intermittent, and the use of the battery, I use a ground with that, and I disconnect the aerials. Well, the aerial's not connected yet, but the ground is just for an instant. So it was a nice little tweak I put in that was good for the circuit, for the sake of the circuit, but whether or not anybody could do that in the real world, have that kind of analog switch that's closed until you turn it on and then it pops open because you don't have anything tied to it to regulate it. So it in a sense it self-regulates because its default position when it's fresh unused is closed, and then unless you set it up opposite, and then when you turn on the circuit its default position is open unless you regulate it, and it stays open. So when you hit the reset button, Paul Falstad did not include that in his routine for reset to close those switches back into their normally closed position. And so when the circuit's off, see, he's got a little checkbox in there. If you want to say normally closed, that means when the circuit is on, which is the opposite to when the circuit is off and has never been turned on before. So I suppose if I wanted to, I could spend some time going into his software and try to figure out how to connect that to the reset button so as to be able to reset those switches, because right now there's no way to do it. You just have to reload the circuit all over again. You have to turn off the simulator, blank out the screen with a blank circuit, and then reload the circuit to get that default position in which those analog switches are closed when the circuit is off and has never been turned on yet. In the real world, of course, it doesn't work that way. You've turned it on and off many times. So, I don't know how great that circuit is. Do you connect it to ground to reset it? How do you reset an analog switch like that in the real world when you turn off your circuit? It's like, I never tried. It's kind of like, I never thought I needed to. Because I'm not trying to be that realistic. I'm just trying to give a general idea when I put forth an idea, to introduce us to a concept, a theme maybe, or a concept. These are all, like when they build concept cars, Detroit, that's what I do. I build concept circuits. And then people complain that they're not buildable, or how come I don't build them, but they're not made to be built. And if anybody wants to, I let them do it, because who knows, they may teach me something, and they do. They usually always do. Any feedback is good feedback most of the time, unless the person is talking nonsense and just pure emotion. But if he's got something good to say, or she, even the slightest amount, it doesn't matter whether it's a criticism or the opposite of criticism, accolade, thumbs up. Either way, I get something out of it. It's just, whatever. I don't have anything more to say. I'm trying to fill up this. I'm slapping my tummy. That was that sound there. Not gurgling. Let's see. I think I can't think of anything else to say. Yeah. So, I'll finish with, I like the point of remembering the fourth type of name or concept to a mag amp is that it's a DC to AC inverter, and that's about the only way I can get a nice sine wave at a reasonable frequency that I can see in the oscilloscope tracing and not be compacted into a wash of color, because it's such a high frequency I can't even tell what kind of wave it is. And I've tried to slow things down. You really have to be ridiculous in slowing things down to find the wave, and then you can slow it down so much. It's like, whoa, that is slow. A little too slow. But it's too much trouble, and I don't bother doing that anymore. I did it once, and it was a lot of trouble, and I spent like a day or two, just doing that alone. Slowing down simulations, either slowing down the time frame or slowing down the frequency of the circuit, or both, to try and see if I can see the wave occur, to get it to show itself. And I was able to do it, but it's just it doesn't produce anything useful to help me build a better circuit. It doesn't give me any useful information at all. So I never focus on frequency, never. If a circuit does its own thing, it does it at whatever frequency it wants to do it. And yeah, if you increase the frequency, you get more energy, but I don't try to do anything with regard to frequency, usually. Sometimes I do. I'll increase the frequency because the energy level is too low. And that's where the mag amp breaks down in terms of reality check, because how do you use that in an EV? You can't directly couple it to the motor shaft or to the axle shaft, the motor shaft with the axle, because your wheels would be spinning too fast, you know. The RPM has to be around 30 RPM to be reasonable in terms of cruising speed at 1800. I mean, the RPM has to be 30 cycles per second in order to have an RPM of 1800, and that's more reasonable. Somewhere in the ballpark of 2000 RPM is reasonable for an axle, but you know, not. But the cycle time per second for that is only 30 cycles per second, and if I have 10 times that, then then it's not going to work. So I believe the use of turbines, bladeless turbines, on either side of a conduit of fluid, a fluidic transmission line, would be the way to go for transferring rotation energy without the use of gears. And Eric Dollard talks about this. I thought I came up with the idea independent of anybody, and it turns out Eric Dollard already mentioned it in some prior Energetic Forum post, that it was a good idea. Because then you can gear down by simply using a smaller circumference, smaller radius of your stacked discs of your bladeless Tesla turbine. You know, if you want to grip the water less so that it doesn't rotate so fast, but if you want it to grip the water better, then you have a larger diameter stack of discs as your bladeless Tesla turbine. And then you got the water working it in between, the fluid. It may not be water, it might be oil, you know. Oil might actually be better, actually, now that I think of it. But whatever fluid it is, it would be better than air. And yeah, that's right, because water has more viscosity than air, so oil has even more viscosity. Molasses is even better, but I don't think you'd want to use molasses. That's where I get a little goofy. Or honey. Ooh, honey, yum. Hey, let's take a honey break, okay? And you dip into the transmission fluid, and the guy's going, "What?" your passengers who are clueless what you're doing, they're going, "Oh my God, he's nuts! He's gonna poison themselves to death." No, it's good taste. Oh, I get a good laugh sometimes. I wasn't laughing while I was walking yesterday. I was stressing my brains out. Grief. A broken heart. God, and I still have that to deal with. But the walk did me some good. It was psychologically cleansing. Okay, now I've said everything I want to say. My motivation for walking 11 miles. Okay. Okay, well, I think that's it. That's my squeaky. Something's squeaky in this building. I don't know what's squeaky. It's not in my room. Whatever. Very mysterious. So, I don't feel too much like working, so that's why I'm sitting here yakking away. Because I don't have to focus. Thank God, I'm relief from focusing. But, hey, do you hear that? Some squeak somewhere. I think it's up in the attic space. Must be the heater or something. Weird. I'm not running the heat, but I mean, somebody else is in this house, but, whatever. She needs it. I don't need it. Well, I do. I just run this little tiny room heater. Yeah, no, I need the heat too, but I just don't run the whole floor heat like I used to. I guess that's everything. I'm still scheduled for eviction by the landlord, but I try not to think about it too much. You know? So I don't have any money to pay rent to go somewhere else. I can't pay rent. It's not paid for me, it doesn't get paid. And on time paid too. That's the only reason why I've started putting out my paypal.me/Vinyasi link, because it's a struggle to pay bills, just survival bills, not the bills that I owe that I haven't paid because they have nothing to do with survival, but they are outstanding bills. Just the survival bills is a hard thing to meet and pay. So it's the only reason why I do that. It's not like I'm trying to have discretionary money to spend, pocket change. It's more like survival here. So what the heck, I put it out. May never yield results, and it may even be annoying to look at that. Oh, he's holding out his hand. Oh my God. Well, I don't do YouTube advertising anymore because it gets in the way, it's annoying, and it doesn't yield anything. So why bother? I never wanted to do it anyway, but I just thought, well, everybody else is doing it, I should do it. And then I realized, no, it's a waste of time, and it's unsightly. Ugh. Darn. I'm not going to bother taking it off the ones I put on, the videos, but far be it for me to use it anymore. No way. Video without advertising. That's the way I go. That's, it's like relief. Oh my God. Oh, this guy must be independently wealthy. Used to be. Not anymore. Maybe there's just a lull. Yeah, things do happen in cycles. You never know. Anyway, there was another thought, and then I think I can stop talking. In prior videos, once in a while, I will say, with a lot of depression and murky film noir death themes, I'll claim that I can't build anything because it would be the death of me, basically. It would produce too much risk for my well-being, and I know that. In today's world, you become the target if you build anything and it works and it's free energy. So I never wanted to be anybody's target, and that's why I've stayed in the realm of just concept circuits without building anything. And I got very close to wanting to a few days ago, thinking, I could do it, and then my intuition was very strong. Don't do it. And then the supplemental, your landlord won't approve. He doesn't approve of a lot of things. Which is why he doesn't do anything to fix up the place. Anyway, he doesn't approve of him changing anything, He's afraid of change, my God. So now he wants to sell and let somebody else deal with the changes that have to be done because he doesn't want to do them. Anyway, to make this place, according to normal standards, conventional standards, In addition to the fact that it's, got other standards going on, but it has nothing to do with conventional standards. That's something else entirely. Anywho, complaint department here. So, but I know when it will be safe for me to build any of my circuits. And it'll be when the shit hits the fan and a large portion of the population starts disappearing very rapidly, because it'll be a changeover at the tipping point when the Age of Enlightenment, the Aquarian dispensation starts to kick in full force. That's when it'll be safe, because the corporate mentality that most everybody is geared for, because that's the only way to survive in today's world, is to be a part of that and subscribe to that. When I went and rented a car with my roommate the other day to be able to do shopping and errands, our once a month errands that we allot for ourselves, I had to fill the tank with gas. And for the last several days, I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe it's not so bad to have a gasoline-oriented car, My electric car is so much trouble, and I don't know anything about the technical side of repairing it, or else I wouldn't be in this. Well, that's not true. We had a lot of critters who chew up wires, and the wires on my Toyota RAV4 EV from 2002, for some reason they used a certain type of insulation that the critters around here love to chew on. They just love it. They go for my car and by comparison, avoid the other cars. Because they've learned, I guess, Detroit has learned, don't use the soft rubber. The critters love that stuff. Use the hard insulation on the wiring, and it'll safeguard the car. And maybe put something in there that's not so tasty, Put a little deterrent in the rubber. Maybe they've done that as well, but Toyota didn't do that in 2002 for the RAV4 EV. And the critters just love my insulation on my wires, so I can't drive it. All the insulation is chewed up. Well, not all of it, but what they can get a hold of, because a lot of wires, the high voltage ones, will go through conduit, and it's colored orange in different places to let you know that that's high voltage conduit, wires inside that conduit. And it's plastic tubing, flex tubing, and they haven't touched that, the critters. But the other wires that I've got in there, they have touched those wires, and it's made a mess of the car, and it won't start up. So, where was I getting at? Oh, that's quite a tangential tangent there. So I'm not going to build anything until it's safe to build something, and in today's world, it's not. There's so many vested interests that would love to nag you, to get you to build something, but I know. Hey, not only have I always loved biographies because they have historical merit, I also like history. And I love to study the history of a thing in order to understand the thing better, to see how it has progressed over time. So I'm in full agreement with Larkin Rose. He studied the IRS code, how it developed over time, over the past century, to have a better understanding of it. Well, it's good to do that in any concept theme that you're studying, is to look what happened over the past century or more. Go back to Roman days. What did they do? When it came to sanitation, civil works and civil engineering of sanitation. It's very good to study these things. So, if you study the history of electrodynamic theory, and you don't have to go to Eric Dollard for that, you can do it on your own, you find out that certain things, there's a policy that's been around for about a century to squash free energy and suppress it and keep it out of view, keep it out of the domain of common knowledge. And it can be quite active. Sometimes they assassinate inventors, but most of the time they just set up conditions in which it becomes very easy for the run of the population to ignore that lone wolf of a voice that cries out in the darkness, "See, I've done it. Pay attention," and nobody does. They don't pay attention. That's the easy way, because it takes less effort to marginalize somebody than it takes to kill them off. So, or steal their patents. That's another good way. Just steal their patents and use them and make them the domain of the military Department of Defense, and then we don't get to use it. Make it highly classified. All these tricks, but marginalization is the easiest one. But whatever it takes, So I'm in no great desire to build anything, because first of all, just to give you an example, and if you study history, the FDA has this policy that used to be much more active, but people have whittled away at it because and very good at swift constitutional attorneys, they have this policy that information and alternative health can never be on the same rack sold in the health food store. It has to be separated by several yards, distance, so that the consumer never gets it in their mind that the information has something to do with that product over there on the other side of the store that's being sold. God forbid we should have information that that product is actually good for something other than sitting there tempting you to buy it. It's actually good for something, or a number of things. God forbid. And that's an infringement of First Amendment right? But hey, FDA will do whatever it can get away with. So they've had this policy for some time, and it's a little relaxed by comparison to what it used to be like in the 70s. This guy was running a bakery, and he was he was shut down by the FDA. And he ended up deciding for himself that he was going to start fighting the FDA and hire some constitutional attorneys. And that's when I started to find out about this. I met him, and he gave me his video, and I put it up on the internet, streamed it. Because, this is atrocious, what we do. But that's just one example. And that's not even free energy. That's just alternative health. That's vitamins. What is it called? BPA? No. HBP, high blood pressure. Saw palmetto. I first learned about this on the Merv Griffin show this married couple or something that were, very knowledgeable and into fighting this kind of thing, because salt palmetto for high blood pressure is just a natural herb. It's a fruit from a date palm type of palm tree that grows in Florida that the Native Americans in that area subsisted on, and it's good for high blood pressure. And here's the FDA, raging a war against the knowledge, the information of its use. So that's just an example, So I'm fully aware of all of the vested interests, the techniques, some of the techniques they use to fight free energy. And so I just stay in the realm of information. And if I started to build something, that would be the crossing over and straddling both worlds. And that's a big no-no. Big time no-no. If you build something but you don't tell anybody how it's done, that's okay. But if you tell somebody how it's done and don't build anything, that also is relatively safe. I don't sell this information. If I sold it, I might come under target. But the fact that I give it away for free means not too many people will get to see it, because I won't have the money to pay for advertising. So not too many people will know about it. So that's safe. From a lot of different standpoints. The IRS can't come after me because I'm not selling anything. And if I don't, so long as I don't get too much in the way of donations, that's safe too. So basically, they foster poverty among the avant-garde, among free thinkers in our society, so that they don't have the funds, the wealth by which they can spread their product or their knowledge or both. So whatever it does to take place safe, and just figure, okay, if I reach a few people, that's, still pretty good. Because it does impact the collective consciousness, even if you reach only one person. Hey, Krishna only reached Arjuna, that was it. That was it. Because when you think about it, that's all you need to do. And look at it. We've got the Bhagavad Gita surviving. Actually, he reached two people. He directly addressed Arjuna, but Sanjaya was listening in, because Sanjaya was a clairvoyant, and he was paying attention to the conversation and relaying it to Dhritarashtra, if I can say the name right, the king of the opposing army, who was fighting Arjuna, the king of the sons who were fighting Arjuna. So that's three people Arjuna reached right away, but only one directly. The other two were indirectly. And because of that, we have the Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it if he didn't at least reach that one person, Arjuna. So it's not a waste to just have a handful of people. I know, it's depressing to think about it. But when you think about it a little further, it's not a waste. What it means, though, is that you're not going to get immediate results in society at that rate. It might take a few centuries. It might take a while. Or maybe just a few generations or a few decades, but whatever. I don't expect to see results in my lifetime. I might get a surprise, but, the tipping point may do it. It may wipe off the face of this planet all of the contentious vested interests that don't want to see it prosper. By one means or another, marginalization, like I say, is the easiest way to make sure the guy is poor and doesn't get to. And so I choose to be non-commercial in my exercise of sharing this information. I put out the donation button, but the donation link, but I work on the contingency that it's a free will offering, and that's the only way I can do it. I can't do it any other way, for many reasons. Those are just some of them. I haven't told you all of them. Some are very personal. Well, if you need to know, it's because I'm a nudist. The reason why I'm a nudist is because of the fraudulent business being done in my family when I was a teenager. And nudity was my silent protest against fraudulent business practices and how we earned our money to support the family. And I took a very strong disliking, very strong. I mean, I gave up girlfriends and boyfriends That's how strong it was. I was so embarrassed and so ashamed that I did not want anybody to know my shame, and so I gave up friendships. And that, if you think I'm a little goofy, it's for that reason, because I have no expertise from the age of 12 onwards of socialization. I just zero socialization skills developed from that point further. Now, I did have 3 additional years of Boy Scouts, so I didn't give up socialization right away, but when I had a bug out of Boy Scouts at the age of 15, that was the end of it. I just had none anymore. And that's the way my life has been ever since, for the most part. So there's nothing wrong with me, physically. It's just a lack of experience from a very young age. And I know that. But, what the fuck, If people want to claim I'm schizophrenic, what the hell? Let them claim whatever they want. Hey, it's their reality they're concocting to justify being mean and nasty, and then legalize it and rubber stamp it with a legal stamp. What the hell? Who cares? That's their karma they're making for themselves. Viktoras Kovinskas said this, and I don't think about it often enough. It's so easy to blame people. The only thing that matters is what you yourself does. Doesn't matter what other people do to you. It matters what you yourself does. That's what matters. And it's true. That has the biggest impact on our life. And actually, when people do things, it's usually because we let them get away with it. And I did. I'm such a pacifist. I let people get away with a lot of things. Done not in my best interest. Done in their best interest. But, I got better things to do than to fight people. And if you have to fight people, you have to develop a certain consciousness, and you have to allocate a certain amount of time in your life. And I don't think it's worth it. I really don't. There are better things to spend my time. And there's better things to create a trend of style of thinking than to create a trend of putting up your dukes, every time somebody wants to meet up with you. Now, it's true, my ex-honey taught me to fight back, but it was not a lesson I wanted to learn, and so I'm doing whatever I can to dismantle that. But it takes time, because it's pure emotion to be beat up over losing your son. And, it's no fault of hers. It was her training, She was just passing the buck, so to speak. So I don't blame her, but I know where it comes from, and I know nobody else did that to me. But, I had a choice, and I chose not to choose it when I was going to college. My second college I went to, out of the various colleges I went to in universities. My buddy was a black belt in Shotokan, and he was a tall black dude, And we were the best of friends, but still, because we had the same consciousness, He was already a yogi even before he started TM, but, he was just that minded fellow. That was his consciousness. So it was very easy for me to be friends with him, because that's the way I'm born. I'm born a yogi, and I didn't know it for the longest time. That's what's going on. It has nothing to do with mental illness. I'm just not materialistic like most people are. I could care less about keeping up the material side of things. Only if I have to, whatever I have to put my attention on, but the minimum. I'm just not interested. There are better things in this world than, keeping up the material side of things. But for some people, that's all they think about, and that's all their reality is. That's why they think I'm weird. So he invited me, because he was head of a club, the Shotokan Club. And he was always embarrassed that in the yearbook, in the 1978 yearbook of MIU, they listed him as the head of the Hapkido Club, if I'm saying that right. Hapkido or Hapkido. No, Hapkido. Hapkido. He said, "No way!" He took great offense to that. So he invited me, "Hey, you should learn self-defense. You should come to my classes, No, I can't see myself punching anybody, because they had pictures of people, they're thrusting their fist out, and doing their exercises and wearing their white smocks, with the belts on, like karate class, ward outfit, And I knew at least one person who was taking his class, and I really, and I envied that person, and I really looked up to that person. He was from Spain. But that couldn't get me to go. You know, all the incentives in the world just couldn't get me to go. So, I never learned self-defense. So I guess Mother Nature, she was pleading with me in a very nice way. But I decided not to, because my father was a pacifist, I'm a pacifist, I was a pacifist in my past life. So, darn, I'm going to stay a pacifist, and I'm not. But, as fate would have it, I got forcefully taught to defend myself. So, and it came the hard way, because I refused to learn it in a nice way when I had the chance. So that's the way I see it. That's why I can't blame my ex, for what she did. Because it was a lesson far in coming, if that's late in coming, that's the expression. It was a lesson late in coming. So, if I still have an aftermath, so be it. It's because I put it off. That's what happens when we put off things. That's when the shit hits the fan. And that's what's going to happen with much of humanity, because people have put off the pursuit of yoga. The millions who were taught TM who don't keep it up, or the millions, the thousands who were taught some other meditation technique don't keep it up, It's a good thing to spend some time twice a day to meditate. It's good to prevent disasters, whether they are man-made or natural disasters or both. It should be a good incentive, but people don't see it coming because we've taken care of, for the most part, the natural disasters, but we still have a few more that have been put off. And then we have the man-made disasters, in which, we endeavor to put off, like a collapsed economy, That's a man-made disaster that's been put off for quite some time. So, and then there are these other man-made disasters that are low-grade, like chemtrail spraying. It's like, what is going on with that? Who knows what's going on with that? But when the tipping point happens, the corporate mentality is not going to survive. And the corporate mentality has no heart. Zero. It's great on management, because that's the highest development of consciousness of the corporate mentality, is just shy of sharing. And, when you have this bottleneck of growth, it bottles up at its stasis position, and then develops that position really, really, really well, because it never goes further in terms of spiritual development. There are two angles to development. There's the spiritual, which is the vertical, and then there's the material, which is the horizontal. And I liken the material to variegation. It's like a plant. You have the same species, a plant, same genus, same species, but you have varieties within that species. And even in the human species, we have varieties, right? We have colored skins. We have shapes of noses, shapes of heads, spacing of the eyes, shapes of mouth. All these variations that are not just individualistic, but are also thematic to a cultural group, such as the Greeks, modern-day Greeks, modern-day Spaniard, modern-day Mexican, modern-day Canadian, which is, a mixture of French and whatnot, modern-day Asian. There's all these facial features and topologies of the physiology and they're superficial, to be sure, but they don't have a whole lot of depth of meaning. To try to see too much into it is like, don't even bother. But it's just nuances, like the nuances of a composition of a musical piece. They're just nuances, and it should give. It's like, what topping do you want on your hot dog? I mean, it's just a nuance. Well, I think I'll go for sauerkraut today. I feel like sauerkraut. Hold the mustard. That's all it is. But it's something, but that's all it is. It's like, what color socks do I want to wear today? I'll go with white. I always go with white. Okay, I'll just stick with white. White's good. No, I feel like black, or I feel like argyle, whatever. Where does this all come from? Wow, I really lost the train of thought there. Yeah. Anyway, so in today, oh yeah. So the horizontal is variegation. Is how you just can vary something. How many different ways can I vary this? And it doesn't get really better, essentially better. It just gets a different way of doing the same thing. You know, for the sake of variety alone, basically, so you don't get bored. But it doesn't get intrinsically different. Yeah, better is not the right way to put it. You know, we only have so much life force. And we have to decide, we have to prioritize how we spend that life force. So when you get a shift in consciousness, you get a shift of prioritization, where you spend your life force. So you don't spend it over there anymore. Now you spend it over here. So you don't necessarily get more of everything. You get more consciousness, but that's not a materialistic thing. That has nothing to do with the material world. But what it does have to do with is your sense for priorities as to how you spend your limited resources of the physical life form that you incarnate and the life force that enlivens it. And you very innocently, you know, without thinking about it, when you get a shift in consciousness, you just make different decisions and you stop making the other ones and you make new ones to replace the old ones, and you don't even notice. Other people around you notice, but you don't notice because it's so innocent. The shift is so innocent you don't even notice it. And that's the best way, don't you think? Because if you notice it, you're liable to fight it, you know. And I don't want to, no, I want to keep doing what I'm doing, stay in my comfort zone. But when you meditate, you shift your consciousness, and very innocently you start making different decisions. Like, I forget the name of that radio jock in New York, who once in a while will put in a good plug for TM. Because he says, well, it cured my mom of depression when my mom's sister died, and she was overrun with depression. Well, I gave up smoking. Very innocently, I just stopped smoking. I just had no desire for it anymore. I didn't try to stop, and I was a chain smoker, and I just stopped. For what it's worth, you know, for if it's better or worse of a change, you know, I just didn't need to anymore. He's talking for himself, not me. I never smoked. I'm an asthmatic. I'm born with the inclination to not like smoke of any. I can't even burn incense, and that I would like to do, but I can't even do that. Not even pine incense. I tried. That's probably the least gross of the incenses, but I can't even burn pine incense or cedar wood or something, you know. Tried to, but even that has to come to an end. Start getting a sore throat, and then it starts getting worse. And anywho, and Charlie Luce had a saying for that. It just means our bad karma has caught up to us. You know, that's all it means. So now we're forced to make healthy decisions. We don't have the choice. We don't have the wiggle room to choose wrongly anymore. You know, because we've abused ourselves for too many lifetimes to get away with it anymore. So now we're forced by all kinds of hypersensitivities that, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, can't drink liquor, can't smoke a cigar, can't eat meat. What can you do? Can't do drugs. What can you do for fun? Get naked. Okay, well, I'm marginally still holding on to that one. Because it feels good and it seems so natural. Not in today's world. Wait until the change occurs, and then you'll find a lot of people getting naked because they've been wanting to all along. They just don't want to buck the system. They want to be a goody two-shoes, and they want to be under the radar, so they're not going to make any stupid mistakes like me. But a lot of people will be able to, because it won't be stupid anymore, because the corporate mentality will no longer have the corporation to police everyone anymore, by one means or another. Sometimes it's just positive feedback, you know. Encourage one thing and ignore the other thing, and that kind of sways everybody into a certain line of actions because they get rewarded if they do that thing that the corporation wants them to do. You know, there's a lot of ways to persuade people. It's not hard. The money is over here. If you want to get paid and get the job, you have to go over here. You don't go over there. Very easy. Easy way to persuade people. So when that shift occurs, it'll probably be safe. Just not now. It'd be presumptuous. So I focus on honing my craft, honing my understanding, honing my reflexes. Because when I'm doing a simulation, it's all reflex. Try this, try that. I don't have any conscious knowledge of what I'm doing, but I've developed a kind of a subconscious knee-jerk response to just kind of know what to try, because it tends to produce good results. So it's worth trying again. May not be appropriate for the circuit, but I got this little toolkit just underneath my radar of conscious decision making that's kind of borderline, that's in my conscious decision making, but it's also just a feeling, because I don't give it any attention to think about why does it work. I don't care. If it works, that's all if it's a possibility of working, that's all I need to know. I can analyze it until I'm blue in the face afterwards, after I have the successful simulation properly organized and crafted. Then I can analyze it for what it's worth and go seek Eric Dollard, and see what he has to say on the subject pertaining to that particular circuit style. But, not when I'm crafting it. I don't want to have to think too much. Just knee-jerk response, flexing of my brain, because I got to go through so many possibilities. I don't know what I'm doing, and I got to do them fast and get past the ones that fail as fast as possible to get to the one that might work. Exhaust all the concepts. Anyway, all the techniques. Because it's nice to have a circuit that blows up. That's at least heartwarming. That's the beginning of success. But then you got to take it further. It's a lot of work, and it's more work in the real world. So I'm trying to get rid of the work as much as I can that can be gotten rid of in the virtual world of the simulator, so that's at least that much work I won't have to do when it comes time to build it. And there's that, benefit, to spending all my time simulating and not building anything, is to simply get as good as I can to the limit that the simulator affords me. And of course it's limited, but it's not zero. It does give me some wiggle room to learn and some freedom to vary my responses to the situation, to the challenge that I'm confronting myself with, the type of circuit I'm trying to build, that I have, vaguely in my mind, without much there in terms of what to do, what to try, well, how is it done? It's one thing to think a thing, it's another thing to do it. So probably there'll come a time, and probably in my lifetime, I'm trying to survive, like the rest of us. Charlie Luce would say, when that shift occurs, it'd be nice not to be in the grave, when that happens. It'd be nice to be among the living. But he did relay to us that he knew he wasn't going to be here when that happens. And his mom said the same thing to him, because his mom was clairvoyant, and she would say to him, and his wife was clairvoyant. So his mom would say to him, I won't be able to live when that change occurs, but she knew it was going to come. And Charlie knew it was going to come, and tried to, boost our spirits, to try to hang in there. Just keep meditating and hang in there. That's all you got to do. And pay attention to the things that come up that deserve to have its attention paid to. Try to be, at least conscientious about the kind of decisions we make in the world of activity, in the field of activity. But most importantly, though, just keep meditating in the field of yoga, in the field of rest, in the field of coherence. It's because that's really all yoga does. It improves the coherence of rest, such that if we did not do it, the only the level of coherence that we would have when we take rest is the level of coherence of sleep. And on that note, evolution does occur. It just takes longer, because the level of coherence is far less than the level of coherence that yoga has to offer. But it's still rest. Rest is rest. And any amount of rest helps the path of evolution, because it's the flip side to activity, and you have to alternate between rest and activity. We all know that. But when you increase the quality of the rest, you automatically speed up evolution for one half of the two phases of evolution, because evolution is predicated on both rest and activity. Without even regarding activity, just regarding rest, improving the quality of the rest, you're already, that'll bleed into the activity, very innocently, spontaneously, without any effort or putting attention on it. But Charlie said it's good to put a little attention. Not a lot, but a little attention on our activity to try to make intelligent decisions, And that's what religion tells us, is that the decisions we make in activity doesn't help us with the field of rest. So you see, religion, there's nothing wrong with it. It just concerns itself with half of our existence, the field of activity, morals, morality. And actually, that's 2 limbs of the 8 limbs of yoga, is the morality side of religion, which is about all religion does. I mean, in the monastic life, they do have techniques, right? But who becomes a monk or a nun? We like to retain our status as a householder and be active in the world. It's just that my karma is such, both what I was born with as well as what I've acquired since then, that I can't do a whole lot. And so I do what I can get away with doing. I don't do anything more. And that's the extent of my daily routine. Or once in a while, monthly or biannual or whatever it is. So, I guess I've really covered a lot here. And I guess that's enough. Should be enough to give you a little background as well as a little foreground of what I do. So you get a nicely rounded perspective. If you want to know the reason why I grow my hair long, and then maybe I'll shut up, it does help the thinking process, and mainly the intuition. It does help. It helps ground the intuition, but it also helps empower it. I don't like hair on the rest of my body, I have to admit. But be that as it may, head hair does help the thinking process. Now what happens when you burn off all your hair follicles and you end up bald, I don't know. Hopefully you can still think a worthwhile thought at that point. Because I am losing my hair, but it's gradual, but it is happening. Anywho, and the ringing in my ears is quite loud. And I never understood that, but I forgot I once did understand it. It's a loss of hearing. The oral neuron is becoming degraded, or the area of the brain having to do with hearing is becoming degraded. Somewhere along the neural pathway, it's degrading, and that's why the ringing is happening. So, yeah, it's been happening since around 1990. So it's been going on for I've had degradation going on for a long time, very gradual. But it's quite loud at the moment. Makes it hard to hear the TV or hear people talking, because the ringing, it competes. But it's also loss of hearing that goes with that. It's not just the competition. See, I forgot that it's loss of hearing. I thought it's just competition between the ringing and the sounds surrounding us. But it's more than that. It's the loss of the neural pathway, or the reception in the brain, or whatever. It's something neural. And I don't do silver baths. I kind of stopped because, I don't know, I don't like taking long baths. In a child-sized bathtub where I get a sore neck just, trying to fit inside of it, all curled up. So it's not exactly encouraging. Okay, I think I've covered enough. At least I still have my eyesight somewhat. I wouldn't be able to even do computer work without my eyesight, I don't think. Yeah, it would be kind of tough to learn a whole new skill. Because I draft circuits, and that's graphical. How do you get along without your eyes and be able to do graphics? I guess it's possible to learn it. You have to learn a whole new skill, that for sure. I've given up on reading. I just don't bother anymore. Unless it's on the computer monitor, there's not enough light, indoor lighting, to facilitate my being able to read, just with my naked eye. So I don't bother. I don't bother to go outside to read, because there, in the shade, there's adequate lighting, barely adequate lighting to be able to read a book. I don't even bother. If it's not on the internet, I don't bother reading it. So that's why I watch so many movies, because I can't read books and relax with a good book anymore. I grew up that way. If it's not graphical, I don't pay attention to it. If it doesn't have pictures. Moving or static, doesn't matter either way. So, I guess I should call this quits. Yeah, alright. Changing altitude makes me dizzy. Oh god, I guess I gotta eat something. Maybe take a little iron. Wow. Boy, oh my god, I'm talking about getting dizzy just by sitting up. Ugh. That means my blood pressure is low, I guess. Or something. Oh my god, that is... Oh god, talk about dizzy. Whoa. Okay.